Hello there. Welcome to our brand new technique of the month. Happy April to you. Can't believe it's already April. Wow. And time is flying this year. But welcome. I hope you had a great weekend. This is going to be a kind of a fun technique this month. We're going to be doing the flip and drag technique. It's a very cool kind of variation of the regular flip cup. You can get some more dynamic types of paintings with the flip and drag, I feel, and there's a lot of ways to do it. So I'm going to walk you through it tonight, and we'll talk about kind of the different consistencies and formulas I like to use, and kind of do a standard flip and drag. And then I'll be doing some variations and kind of different styles of flip and drag in the next couple weeks. So right behind me is a flip and drag painting. This is one way to do it. It's one of my favorite ways to do it. So this is kind of has a double base coat on it, and I did a lot of manipulation with combs and lip drags and things like that. So you can do a lot of cool different types of variations of the flip and drag. So this is one way. We're gonna not be doing this tonight, but we'll be exploring something like this next week. And so there's a lot of cool things you can do with the flip and drag. And so I hope you're ready to learn how to do it. I'm sure you've probably seen this technique before, but it's a fun one. I've done many of them, and I've done a lot of demos of the flip and drag, but we haven't really covered it in the membership yet. So that's what we're going to do. So it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Welcome, everyone. Before I get into it, hey, Pat and Carla, welcome. And Judy is here. Monique is here. Fantastic. Elsie. Awesome. I don't know if I missed anyone, but cool. Very cool. So, of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the comments, and I will be happy to answer them. And I'm sure more members will be joining us in a little bit, but I have created a flip and drag technique sheet for you, and so you can download this right now inside the membership in the flip and drag technique section. So it just gives you a little overview and the mixing formulas I like to use the best for this technique, paint consistencies, and then kind of a walkthrough and then some variations that you can do. So we'll be talking about all that stuff tonight. And so it's not a super complex technique. It's very similar, like I said, to the flip cup. There are a couple differences. We're going to be using a couple different tools to do our flip and drag. Normally what I like to do is make like a floating cup for our flip and drag, and as you probably know, you just poke a hole in your cup, cover it with a little tape tab, and after you've layered your cup and flipped it, pull that tape tab. It makes it a whole lot easier to release the paint out slowly. And so before we get into all that, what is a flip and drag? Well, basically we're doing a flip cup, flipping a cup of paint on our canvas. I like to usually flip it on one of the edges, somewhere close to an edge. Then they're kind of carefully letting the paint out in kind of a slow, gradual stream as we move the cup or drag it across our canvas. And what that does is gives us a long, like a paint ribbon or a paint puddle. So we don't have a big blob of paint like right in the middle. We've got this kind of stretched out paint ribbon that kind of stretches around the canvas. It's a great technique if you love negative space. You can really plan and incorporate negative space into these types of paintings. So that's one big benefit to it. And but you have this long ribbon, you can kind of wiggle it around, and then once you start tilting that around, it creates a much more interesting design and shape. You can get some very cool edges to your paint puddle, and that creates a much more interesting negative space shape or negative space shapes. So you can have a single negative space, which would be the base coat color. You can have multiple negative space shapes, so like a split base split cup or split pour. So you can have two different negative space colors and then kind of drag your cup through that. That's kind of what we did on this painting behind me, I had two different base coats, and then I dragged my cup through both of those. It gives you a much more interesting, much more dynamic composition. So I'll go over the colors I'm going to be using tonight. I think I'm going to be working with some Triadic colors maybe this month. I haven't given you like a color scheme in the last few months, so I thought let's work on something. This is kind of a classic color scheme, and so we'll go over what a Triadic color scheme is. And I've created a Triadic palette here, and so it will be a whole lot of fun. So, alrighty. So you can do these a lot of different ways, like I mentioned. So you don't have to do all the combs or have negative space. We're going to just do a standard, kind of like a regular flip cup, and I'm going to tilt over all of the edges, but just in a flip and drag manner. So you can modify this many different ways. So the formulas I like to use for this one, pretty much the standard ones I use all the time. The easy formula works great with this, just Floetrol and paint. The Liquitex formula also works great with this one. So basically the easy formula with a little Liquitex pouring medium in it. You could also use the glue mixture for this one too, and add some of our coconut oil, and then torch it and get these great cells. So that's another fun one to try out with the flip and drag technique. So those are the three formulas I usually would use. Consistency wise, I usually stick with the number 2 or 3 consistency. I kind of like the number 3 consistency for flip and drags to make that paint just a little bit thinner. That way when you're tilting, I like to tilt kind of aggressively with a lot of flip and drag pours. It gets the paint to move in more interesting ways, and so you can kind of create those really cool edges between your paint puddle and your base coat. So I like to keep the paint, number 2 works just fine, but I usually tend to go with the number 3, that slight mound consistency, just to get the paint moving a little bit quicker when I do my tilting. So that is kind of like what a flip and drag is. Pretty straightforward. So why don't I go ahead, I'm going to flip the camera, and we'll take a look at the colors I have mixed up and our Triadic color scheme. So let me flip the camera over here. So here we go. I'm working on a smaller panel tonight. So this is a 12 by 15 inch panel. I wanted a little smaller format just so I could zoom in a little closer so you can kind of see the color wheel a little bit better. So here is our standard color wheel, of course, that I've shown many times. We're working on the back side today, and this is where we can see some of these interesting color harmonies. And so if you look in here, there's some triangles and some squares. Actually, it might be a little harder. I'm going to hold it up. So here you can see this little very narrow triangle. That's what's called a split complementary color scheme. We're working with this larger triangle, and that is called a triadic color scheme. And basically what that is, triads is obviously 3, but it's just colors that are equal distance from each other on the color wheel. And I've blocked out these other colors so you can only see the triad colors. So if we spin this, we can see what other triads would be. I'll spin it over here. So this is like a red-orange, yellow-green, and a blue-violet. That's a triad. This is a red, yellow, and blue. Now that is the primary colors. They are triadic colors. So that is a triad as well. This is a tough one to use though, especially for paint pouring. As we learned last week, if these 3 colors mix a lot, you get a lot of mud. Now there's a lot of ways to use these in kind of more traditional styles of painting where you can really control how much blue and red and yellow are in your, on your canvas and things like that. So, this is just, we're looking at it from the lens of paint pouring, and this is a tough one to use. And we have kind of like a blue-green, that would be like a teal, and a red-violet, and a yellow-orange. That's the one we're going to be using tonight. So let me flip back here. So we're actually kind of be working, it's not exactly, it's not perfectly yellow-orange and perfectly blue-green and perfectly red-violet. We're actually kind of going to be here. So it's going to be kind of between more of an orange-yellow, yellow-orange, kind of between a blue-green-green, and kind of between a red-violet-violet. So you don't have to be super literal with these colors. You can play around with them and these color schemes. So what we're going to be, I'm going to be layering my cup with all of these. Now, just like we talked about last week with the muddy colors, this can be a tricky color scheme to use with paint pouring, because blue here, well, blue is the complement of orange, which we're kind of in the middle here of orange and blue. So these two, blue and orange, are complements. Purple and yellow are complements. So we're kind of have this kind of weird, somewhat complementary color scheme going here. But we're going to be using a barrier color, which is white, tonight. So we're going to be kind of hedging our bets so we can kind of avoid trying to get some muddy colors. The other thing we're going to be doing is using some metallics to mix our yellow-orange color. So that is our Triadic color scheme. This is a classic color scheme. These colors go very well together. We'll find out if it works tonight, but I have a feeling it will. Now, one thing with all of these kind of Triadic color schemes, one thing to keep in mind is you don't have to use the same amount of all of these colors. I'm going to be using maybe just a smallish amount of our yellowish orange, and much more of our blue-greens and our violets. Probably more of the blue-greens. That's going to be the dominant color in this composition. So we want to vary the amounts of colors we're using with pretty much all of these different types of color harmonies and color schemes. We want to pick one to be our kind of dominant color, which will be the blue-green. One will be our secondary color, which will kind of probably be our red-violet here, our purple red-violet color. And then we have kind of an accent color, which we'll use just smallish amounts of, and that's going to be our like yellowy orange color here. So you always want to kind of put your colors in, dominant and then subordinate kind of categories, and then have some accent colors as well. So that's just a little bit about our Triadic color scheme. Let's take a look at the actual paints we're going to be using here, and we'll do our demo. And let's see here. All right, so no questions yet. I probably just confused everyone, but we'll keep on going. So, all right, so here we go. We've got our two blue-greens. I've got two different ones. Now, again, you don't have to use just one color to be part of your triad. We've got two colors here, but they're both bluish, greenish colors. So we're going to be using both of them. And this is a beautiful ocean green from Master's Touch. This is a really awesome lake blue color. Now, this is much more of a blue than a green, but it's slightly on the blue-green side, and so it works really well as our blue-green. Now, blue-green, typically you'd think of, well, that's like a turquoise color, and this is kind of a turquoisey color. But there were many, many different variations and shades of our blue-green. So these two are both examples of blue-greens. We've got our kind of red-violet right here. This is actually, it's actually called blue-violet, but it is kind of on the, I find it is more of a reddish-violet color, even though in Amsterdam calls it a blue-violet. We're going to say it's a red-violet. So, but it's more of a kind of just a violet / reddish-violet. So we don't have to be so literal. And over here, I've mixed up kind of a goldish orange color. And so these are both metallics. We've got Artist Loft Gold, Artist Loft Metallic Orange. So I'm using metallics again. They tend to be get a little less muddy, and they're both opaque. So that will kind of help. So when they dry, you are not going to see colors underneath our gold and our orange here. So that's going to be our yellowish orange color for this particular painting. And I've got some white over here. This will be in our layered cup as well as the base coat. And I'm using Craft Smart paint here. I'm exploring all these different white paints to see which ones I like and which ones I don't like. I haven't really used this one much, so I thought I'd give it a shot. This is a multi-surface premium satin acrylic paint. Now it's not satin enamel, so I don't think we're going to get like the cloud effects with this one, but it's just a different type of white acrylic paint, so a little bit higher quality. But we'll see how it works in this painting. So I'm just experimenting with lots of different whites to see if I can find one that I can use as a replacement more often than not for that Artist Loft Flow Acrylic, which tends to make everything cloudy. So that's our white for tonight. And then I've got a cup here. So this is just a standard, plastic cup. We're going to be using 7 ounces for this panel. That's what it takes for a standard flip cup. Again, we're not going to have negative space in this one. This is just going to be kind of a standard flip and drag, and we're just going to cover all the edges and everything, and we'll get into some more negative space paintings next week. And I've poked my little hole right here with my awl, and I've put a tape tab right on top, and we are ready to go ahead and layer our cup. So, and what I've used here, this is all the easy formula. Let me get my paints ready. So the easy formula, just 2 parts Floetrol, 1 part paint, including the white. This is just, 2 parts Floetrol, 1 part paint, some water to get them all to the number 2 consistency. So I'm using the number 2 consistency for these paints, just because I'm not going to be doing like really aggressive tilting, because I'm going to be tilting over the whole surface. So I normally save the number 3 consistency when I want to keep that negative space and create those interesting edges. So that is what we've got. Kind of a colorful palette. We'll see how it works for us. And I'll move my paints aside. And let's see here. And Carla's just said, I just noticed this. She said, I tried the Artezzo Titanium and it looks like the Artist Loft Soft Body, kind of cloudy. Yeah, a lot of those paints, you never know what you're going to get until you try them out. Some of them have very interesting effects. And they can be kind of like that cloudy, create that cloudy effect like that satin enamel. And Lynn is asking, are you using Artist Loft white in the base coat? No, I'm using Craft Smart white, like I just mentioned. So this is the multi-surface, just a satin paint. Satin refers to the sheen of the paint. So it's not matte, it's not shiny, it's a satin finish. It's not satin enamel, so I doubt it will have any satin enamel effects, but you might create some interesting cells though. So a lot of these craft paints can be very reactive and create a lot of cool cells. So maybe we'll get some of that. We'll find out in a moment. So let's go ahead and layer our cup here, and then we'll put our base coat on, and we'll do our flip and drag. So I'm going to start with my orange, and this is going to be the first color in the cup. And remember, with the flip cup, even though this is we're flipping it over, that color should end up on top of our other colors, which is good because I want this to be our accent color. I'm not going to be using a lot of it in our cup, so we'll put in a little, smallish amount there, and then I'm going to be using a barrier color on top of that, which will be our white. So I'm going to pour in a little bit of white, not a ton of white, just a small amount. And then we'll go to our our light green, and our lake blue, and I'll be using more of those colors. Then we'll put in a little bit of our purple. I wanted, you know, this is also, it's part of the Triadic color scheme, but it's also a dark value. So that acts as my dark value as well. Now we're going to go back to our white, just a little bit of white. And we'll get different shades of our purple and blues with the white. And then back to our orange. And then again, another barrier layer. And you can layer your cup any way you want. You can do the high pour, you can do the drizzle layer. These are all just floating layers, just because I don't want the paint mixing too much in the cup till we do our flip cup. There's some more blue, and put a little more blue in there. Also going to put a little more of our light blue. It's a really pretty color. And then some more purple, and that will be it. So that's all of our paint we're going to use, 7 ounces. So we've got, you know, just 2 layers, 2 relatively small layers of our orange, and then, you know, kind of 2 larger layers of our other colors. So we'll put this aside for the moment. Put it over here. And we'll take, I think I'll leave that right here. I'm looking at my other camera. And let's pour on our base coat. Now with the flip and drag, I always use a base coat. It's similar, it's kind of similar to an open cup pour, I guess, or floating cup, where the base coat is going to kind of react somewhat with our paints as it kind of, as the paints flow out from underneath our cup. So I always like to have a base coat. And you can use 1 or 2 colors, again, or 3 colors if you want to get really complex with like a cool negative space pour. So it doesn't have to be real thick or anything like that. I'm just putting it on like kind of pretty normal, pretty much a normal thickness. I actually have a little too much. Just scrape a little off. And I want the paint to be flowing on top of the base coat as it comes out from under the cup. Instead of dragging the cup, I'm not going to be pushing on the cup very hard, so it's dragging across the surface. We want it to kind of glide across the surface as the paint flows out. And we'll see that in just a moment. All right, so we got our base coat on. I might give that a quick torch. And pop some air bubbles. Carla's got a question. And Carla's asking, are your layers close to the same size? I would say not, they're kind of close, I guess. Now there's definitely more blue of the green, blue-green in here than the orange, but I used like smallish amounts of white just as a separator. I didn't want lots of white, so a little bit of orange, a little bit of white, some more quantity of the blue-greens, and then kind of a smallish amount, you know, of the purple. So I kind of used more of the blue-green. Since that's the dominant color, I wanted to use a little bit more of that. Plus there's 2 of them, so there's definitely more of the blue-green than all the other colors. Good question. So, all right, we're ready to go and flip our cup. Now you could flip it the standard way if you wanted to. But I like to kind of place my cup carefully and decide where I want it to go on my panel or canvas. So I'm going to use my flipping tool here. I'm going to turn it over. And I think I'm going to put it right around here on the corner, closer to the corner, and then kind of move it diagonally across the surface. So here we go, just drop it on there. And we are just let it sit there. The paint is settling down. And now it's time to pull our tape tab. And what we're going to do is we're going to, instead of a floating cup where you kind of pull the tab and just let the cup go, it's going to float around wherever it wants. We're going to put a little pressure on our cup so it doesn't move until we want it to move. So I'm going to, I want to flip the camera first. And give a close-up shot of the paint as it flows out. We're getting a couple cells happening here. So I'm going to pull off my tab. And what the tab is doing, it's releasing the vacuum inside this cup. So now, if I didn't have a tab here or a hole in the cup, and I wanted to try to let the paint flow out gradually, as soon as I lift the cup, all the paint's going to fly out because there's that vacuum, and the air, when you release that vacuum, everything rushes out all at once. But now that I've used the, poked a hole in there, used the tape tab, I can much more gradually allow the paint to flow out of the cup. So you still have to be kind of careful, and you'll feel a little pressure. You'll feel the paint want to kind of shoot out from there. But I'm going to just start moving my cup slowly, letting the paint out. And you can always stop it by just pushing down on the cup, and that will stop the paint from flowing. If it's coming out a little too fast, I'm going to turn the cup a little bit, change the direction of the puddle a little, push it down again, let the paint come out a little bit more. I can stop it if I want to. We're getting some cool cells happening. I can turn it again. I can push it back down if I need to. I'm just, looking at, the colors coming out, the kind of the pattern and the design of the paint puddle. And I basically want to keep the paint puddle mostly on the canvas. I don't want a ton of paint rolling off the edges. So let a little bit more out. I'm kind of turning the cup as I drag it here. And I can kind of feel it now. And you'll be able to feel it. All the paint has gone out of the cup. And you can even lift the cup off and see what you've got. And so it's somewhat similar to a floating cup. It's a little bit more of a controlled floating cup. We've got a kind of an interesting center section there. So let me flip the camera again. So here's a top view. We have some orange happening. There's little accents of orange. Hopefully we can get a little bit more of that to pop up as we start tilting. I'm not in love with the center of our cup. I'm going to just do a little twirl, and I want to pull it back into, ooh, that turned out cool. So it was kind of like a lip drag. And I pulled some of the orange up from the surface. So that's pretty cool. Hopefully I can keep that. That might be our center of interest, somewhere around there. So now we can just take a look at it. We've got lots of cells happening. I think a lot of that might be from our white paint that we used. So we can start tilting now. And we're going to just take a look. I'm going to kind of expand the paint puddle a little bit, but not a lot. We have to kind of treat this a little differently than we would a normal round paint puddle, just because it's covering a lot of the canvas already in an interesting way. So I'm going to actually tilt this corner off right away so I can keep this very cool kind of feathery orange shape we have here. So there are no real rules to tilting. I kind of like to stick with my traditional rules, but you can kind of make it up as you go here. This first, I just want to make sure I get it. Oh shoot, I lost a little more than I wanted to, but that's okay. So we're just going to kind of move the paint down this way. I might do this corner next, right here. Now at this stage, if you liked what you had, I mean, you can always leave negative space if you want to. That's one of the cool parts about this technique. I'm going to be tilting the whole panel. I decided that already. And we'll work on negative space next week. But if there's something you like, I mean, feel free to leave it if you want. Now we have a lot of paint on here, and normally I like to plan the negative space. So if I wanted to have negative space, I would have used less paint than I put in that cup. So we don't have so much on there, because that would lead to, you might have cracking and things like that happen when the paint dries. So if you want negative space, it's a good idea to kind of plan for it ahead of time. And then that way you won't have so much paint that you have to kind of tilt off. So we're going to continue on here. I'm just going to move the paint kind of slowly. We've got a lot of cool cells. Some of them are going to get dumped off right there. I'm just kind of working it back down. I'm kind of holding it at an angle, kind of aiming for that bottom corner. Just take and turn the canvas. And here we go. Let's try to save a little more of that orange. So there we go. We got a lot happening in this one. So I'm just taking a look at the edges. They all look pretty good. We've covered everything. So that part I liked so much with that orange shape, it kind of got stretched out. We lost a little bit of it. So I was hoping I could perhaps bring that into the composition a little bit more, but I don't think I'll be able to do that. And this area right here kind of took center stage, so that's kind of our center of interest now. Now there is one thing we could do, and I'm just taking a look here. I could tilt a little more of this corner off. This would kind of shift everything down that way a little bit. That might be a good idea. I'll give that a shot. So I'm just going to change the angle and just carefully shift that paint down. It's moving slowly. And I'm thinking of the rule of thirds here. That's why I'm kind of doing this. So there we go. We moved it a little bit. Did it help? I don't know. It doesn't look that much, it doesn't look a whole lot better than it did before, but we managed to kind of pull some of that orange kind of into the composition a little bit more. We kind of nudged this shape over, kind of like that direction that we had before. But, oh well, no one will know, and you won't tell anyone, right? So, but I really like this one. And colors are working well. Again, the orange is an accent color. So we don't have tons of it, but that's kind of the point. We have these little hints up here. I really like this orange kind of lacing we have. These little orange accents kind of running through here. But this is primarily a blue-green painting. And then the second color, well, the second color, our purple, you know, it's a darker color. It's scattered throughout the painting, creating these interesting, you know, dark lines. So that's kind of our secondary color. And then that orange accent, which kind of makes things pop. So I think the Triadic color scheme worked pretty good in this instance. And you never quite know until you do the painting, but I like this one. So, and I'm pretty happy with that white. It looks like it was pretty reactive, and we got a lot of cool cells. So I'll keep using the Craft Smart, and it didn't do any cloudy stuff, which is good. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So we have a little touch up maybe to do on the edges a little bit. We could do that, but I can do that anytime. So this is a very standard flip and drag, and we didn't do any manipulating of the paint puddle, really, aside from that very subtle cup drag with the top of our cup to just break up that center. But that was about it. Then we just did our tilting, and we ended up with something pretty cool. One reason I like this technique probably more than a standard flip cup is when you can drag the paint over the canvas, let the paint kind of go out gradually, you don't end up with a lot of those flip cups with this big, boring area of one color. That often it happens so often when I do flip cups. Maybe it's just me, I don't know. But this way, when you can let that paint out more gradually, the paint is reacting, all the colors are reacting with each other as they're flowing out from under the cup. So it's a little bit more like a floating cup that you're kind of in control of a little bit more. So that's one fun thing. Plus you can do the negative space aspect, which we'll look at next week. We can do manipulation with, you know, lip drags and finger drags and combs and all sorts of fun things. And we'll take a look at that too. Plus, you can also, and this is a more advanced aspect, but we can incorporate a cloud mixture into your layered cup, which we'll look at in our second set of demos, and get some cloudy effects if we want those as well. So that is a standard flip and drag, and it turned out pretty cool. So let's see here. Any questions that you might have? Let me flip back here. Here we go. So any questions you might have about the flip and drag or the consistencies or technique or anything else, let me know. Let's see here. Well, thank you. Everyone seems to like it, so that's good. It's always a good sign. All right. So let's see. And Carla's saying, no, it's not just you with the kind of big, boring flip cups. Yes, that's good. And And Lynn is asking, would using metallics make more cells? Well, there are two metallics in here already. The gold, the orange, the gold orange were both metallics. But if you used lots more metallics, you might be able to get more cells. You never quite know though. I mean, but I think we got quite a few cells in this one. And I think most of that is due to the white paint that we used. White can be one of those that you get a lot of cells with it. And it can cause other colors to create more cells too. But yeah, you could always try more metallics and they might create more cells. So, and yeah, Carla wants a closer look. Sure, let me zoom in a moment. And then Don is asking, off topic, but I'm wondering if I can put pouring medium in one color. Do I need to put it in all colors, or can I just make sure they're the same consistency? Are you talking about like Liquitex pouring medium or another type of pouring medium? You could put it in one or a couple colors. I usually put it in, if I'm going to use it, I use it in all the colors. Otherwise, I just use a different formula. That's just me. But yeah, you could try using it in a couple colors if you wanted to, or one color. Is there a specific reason you're doing it? Like if there's a specific reason you want to use it in just one color though, let me know. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Just make sure the consistency is the same and you'll be fine. So let's see here. Let me flip back and we'll get a closer look at our painting here. Okay, so let me show you maybe a little bit better view of, it's still kind of hard to see, this orange kind of cloudy effect. It's very crisp, but it looks a little bit fuzzy on the camera. But we'll see how that dries. Again, if it was just regular orange, that's a semi-transparent orange, when that dries, it's going to look kind of brown. I'm hoping that, you know, I'm using opaque metallic colors for that. Once it dries, it'll keep its orange kind of luster and be metallic as well. So hopefully you can get around that muddy aspect of oranges and like yellows. So, but I'll look at the bottom here and I'll kind of come back up. So we got a lot of those cool cells happening. I'm gonna scooch my camera over this way. So there's the top. I like the orange, the subtle orange in those cells right there, kind of popping through. And then here's down at the bottom. So yeah, turned out pretty cool. So that's definitely kind of our center of interest area, you know, right here. So, all right. So Cinda's got a follow-up. Let me flip back here. Okay, so, or Donna, sorry, has a follow-up. So Donna's asking, I was going to use iridescent Liquitex in one color and wasn't going to bother to put Liquitex in the other colors if I don't need to. Yeah, give it a try. I mean, is there a reason you want to have one color more iridescent than the other colors? It would give it a different look. Now, I would, you know, be careful which color you put it into. If you put it into, I'd probably put it in your most like dominant color, I guess. I don't know. I need to know more about your painting. but give it a try. And if you put it in a lighter color, like your whites, then your whites are going to be kind of iridescent when it dries. It depends on kind of what colors you're using, but yeah, give it a shot. I would definitely experiment. That's the name of the game, is just trying stuff out and seeing if it works and seeing if you like it. So go ahead and give it a try. So, and then if you put it in all the colors, like iridescent pouring medium, that's a little different, because then everything's going to be iridescent when it dries. If you want to focus on one color and have that be iridescent when the painting dries, that's a good reason to do it. So thanks for clarifying that. That makes more sense. Cool. All right. And Carla says, I've done that. Yeah, so Carla's done it. So if Carla's done it, definitely feel free to go ahead and be comfortable doing it. So, all right. Awesome. Cool. Any final questions before we break here? So this is kind of a relatively quick one, but again, this is kind of a straightforward, a little bit more straightforward technique, but then we'll get into some really cool ways to modify it and manipulate it next week in our demos. And so Donna said, it's monochrome, okay, white, Payne's gray, and silver. I was thinking maybe in my Payne's gray. Yeah, go ahead and give it a try. It'll make your Payne's gray like a metallic Payne's gray, basically, is what you'll be getting. And then you'll have silver, so you'll have a lot of iridescence and shininess in there. But yeah, give it a shot. I think that will look cool. And then also, it will give your Payne's gray perhaps a greater chance of creating cells, because the Liquitex regular pouring medium likes to create cells. So it will create some more cells with your Payne's gray, which I think would be very cool. Awesome. Okay. All right. So thanks, everyone. No other questions. And let's see here. All right, cool. Well, thanks for joining me. And I hope you enjoyed the demo. It turned out pretty good. I'm happy with that. Give it a try. Pick out a Triadic color scheme if you want to. Make one of those colors your dominant color. Make one your kind of secondary color, and then make one of them your accent color. And usually with the accent color, you can try some metallics to try and avoid the muddiness that's involved. Usually you're going to end up with like two cool colors and one warm color, or vice versa. So just pick which one you want to be dominant and accent, and then secondary, and give it a shot, give it a try, and see what happens. So of course you can always use white as well, and I would suggest white, so as being a light value, and it also can help you create some cool cells. So all right, great. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Give them a try. I can't wait to see them. Share them in the Facebook group, and have a great rest of your week. I will see you Friday for our Friday demo, and maybe I'll do another flip and drag. We'll find out. So thanks, everyone. I will talk to you again really soon. Bye-bye.